Hey everyone, this is Brett Favre, Green Bay Packers Super Bowl champion. And you're watching Packers Total Access Live, your daily source for Packers content. Go Packers.
What's up, guys? Welcome into Packers Total Access. My name is Clayton. You can check us out on Packernet.com. Find me on Twitter at Packers_access. Email us, PackersTotalAccess@gmail.com. You can text us 865-658-5824. Join alongside Tim in Green Bay. And I just noticed Emilio's name, Mr. Rusty.
I forgot. I completely forgot that was there.
No, you didn't. Stop lying. You know that was all part of the plan. How we doing tonight, fellas? Everybody have a good day?
Yes, sir. Except good for Emilio in the trailer, huh? I caught that on the way in here. A little rough, huh?
Backed up a little bit too far. Nothing wrong with that.
Got to break her in
some,
sometime,
lose
right?
some, man.
Yeah.
Win some and you lose some. That's the way that goes. So, all right. So we got a lot to cover tonight, man. I really don't even know where to start. I guess we'll start on Twitter and or X, I should say, and go through and just take a look at what's going on around the rumor mill. We hit on it pretty extensively earlier. We're also going to do a mock draft later on in the show, where we're going to make ourselves take a wide receiver with the first pick. It may be trade up a few spots. It may be trade back out of the first round, but hell or high water, we're going to take a wide receiver with the first pick to see how the rest of the draft kind of plays out, if that makes sense. So let's go to Twitter real quick. I don't know if you guys seen this, but Keyshawn Nixon, my man, is recruiting today. As you can see down here at the bottom, he tagged Tay Adams in a tweet earlier about 5 hours ago, said, "Pull back up, Tay. Yo, Tay, pull back up." So he's obviously recruiting Davante Adams. ML Football put a tweet out. This is kind of hard for you guys to see, isn't it? I feel like it needs to zoom in a little bit. That better, maybe. Said the Green Bay Packers have the third best odds to acquire star receiver Davante Adams per Bovada official. I guess is a gambling site. Adams is a 3-time first-team All-Pro and 6-time Pro Bowler, one of the best receivers in Green Bay team history, and a future Hall of Famer who fits perfectly. So I thought that was the best guy around. We've actually got odds now, and you kept hearing 3, 4, 5 teams that might be mentioned. And you think, okay, where does he really stand? It seems like the betting odds have him as third of the Packers as third favorite to land Tay. I just want to get your all stake. And what y'all think about Keyshawn Nixon doing a little recruiting there, man?
I'm just laughing at Too Old for This. Whoever did that Tay Photoshop is crisp.
Can't even tell that they photoshopped the Packers uniform.
I love it.
That's the truth, man. I love the visor, but we're spreading the wealth. So you got Jacobs out there doing a little bit of groundwork, got J Love doing a little bit of groundwork, Key, everybody. I mean, that's the fact that they're talking about it now, getting excited about the season, this soon into the off season. I love to see that. We're back hungrier than ever is kind of got to be that mentality going in. I think this is one step.
Yeah.
I agree. I still think, chances are pretty slim. I think, maybe, third best odds. I can see that. Not impossible to get him here. But I don't know how things are going to shake out, especially considering that, we know Aaron's not going to be a Jet next year, right? And depending on where he wants to go, you got to think, this is like, it's Randall Cobb again, like all over again. He's going to go probably where Aaron goes. At least you would think those guys are probably communicating together and, during this offseason, figuring out their plans. And then we just got to wait and see how things unfold. So I would think that, if Tay wants to be on the West Coast and Aaron wants to be on the West Coast and there are deals getting done to bring those guys there, they may try and stay together. But I don't think Tay coming back to Green Bay is completely out of the realm of possibility. No. I just wouldn't say it's probable,
As third best odds, you kind of feel like maybe a 30% chance, something like that, right? So
telling me there's a chance.
Exactly. Jacob joins us now. So we've got Rusty Hertz in here from the Oval Office, and we got Rusty Undercarriage in here as well, as you can see.
Don't put that name in my mouth right there.
Jacob, how do you feel about Tay Adams potentially coming back to the Packers? And I don't know if you've seen, but Keyshawn Nixon doing some recruiting earlier today.
Did you say Rusty Undercarriage?
That is correct, sir. Yes.
Dad?
You dad?
I would love to have Tay back. Obviously, we talk about if the price is right, Bob Barker. But I right now it's seeming like the most logical and team-friendly deal, other than maybe like a Godwin or a dark horse we're not quite seeing just yet that's going to maybe steal it at the back end. But I still think it'd be great. Tay with Love, just Tay being able to finish his career there. I think there was a few records, historical records that he could probably top off with one more season at Green Bay. It'd be great. Personally, I would love it.
Yeah. As Chuck says, the price is wrong, B. Really looking forward to the new Happy Gilmore. When's it set to come out? Do you guys know? I know
it's done filming. I know that.
Yeah. I seen the video that our boy, what's his name?
Shooter McGavin.
Shooter McGavin, one of the best Twitter followers out there, man. As they showed I guess they refilmed the epic scene of him running away, putting his gold jacket on that he stole, right? And looking over his shoulder. So that's going to be in the movie in slow motion, but it was cool to see him filming it. So I gotta love it. So there you go. There's a little bit of rumors around today. Go ahead.
No, gold jacket, green jacket, who gives it?
Exactly. Let's see here. Wide receiver. I had a video and audio I wanted to play since we're kind of talking about wide receiver. Let me throw this up here. This was on Adam Schefter's show earlier where he had Ty Schmidt from the Pat McAfee show. And this was them just talking about, quarterbacks are the headliners of the offseason are the wide receivers in the offseason here. Let's just hit this quick soundbite. It's about 2 minutes long. Adam Schefter kind of runs down all the receivers that are potentially on the market, whether it's through a trade or free agency. Here we go.
This offseason is kind of shaping up to be the offseason of wide receivers. What could you see potentially happening with this group of wide receivers?
I want to read to you the list of wide receivers that this offseason either will be available or will be changing teams. We know about Deebo Samuel, who requested a trade from Kyle Shanahan at his exit meeting and then was told last week he was granted permission to go seek a trade partner. We know about Cooper Kupp last week, who the Rams told, we are going to look to trade you and work with you to find you a new home. So Deebo and Cooper Kupp, we both expect to be traded. Look, Aaron Rodgers, not expected back in New York. There's no reason to expect Davante Adams back in New York if Aaron Rodgers is gone too. So now we've got Deebo, Cooper Kupp, Davante Adams, all on the move. That in and of itself would be interesting. Now I'll read you the list of free agent wide receivers. T. Higgins, Keenan Allen, DeAndre Hopkins, Chris Godwin, Darius Slayton, Amari Cooper, Stephon Diggs. That is quite a list of wide receivers to combine with the other three wide receivers that are going to be changing teams. So when we talk about this being a weak free agent class, which front offices have already said to me, not a great free agent class at all, not a lot of depth, and it's not supposed to be one of the better drafts. So there aren't as many great players available this offseason as there have been in other offseasons. But saying that, wide receiver, in my mind, has to be considered, if not the deepest, certainly the sexiest position available in the offseason with trades and free agents and notable free agent wide receivers there to be had looking to change teams. That's where we're going to get a lot of headlines this offseason, Ty.
All right. So there you go. Obviously, Adam Schefter. Listen, he's not my favorite person to listen to be honest with you. He says a lot of stuff that we already know. I think you guys would agree with that. It's like, hey, man, where do you think Davante Adams is going to play football? Well, Davante Adams, big name wide receiver, played for the Jets last year, could end up on the market. I think it's reasonable to say that Davante Adams could potentially land somewhere in the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
Like, all right, awesome. We didn't learn a damn thing. Appreciate it, Chef.
Thanks, Perd Hapley.
But I thought it was cool that, they kind of identified and highlighted a lot of the receivers we've been talking about here. And you guys know I've been pretty vocal. Out of all the free agents, I think Godwin would be my top favorite. We got a couple Patreon questions we're going to hit on there. But, in regards to Godwin, and actually Dexter Lawrence, defensive tackle for the Giants, has entered the chat. So we'll talk a little bit about him as well. Not that he's on the trade block to the best of my knowledge. Maybe he is. But someone had just mentioned, what do you think about him? And you guys, I think, will be very surprised at what we uncover there. But based off what Schefter said, you guys got anything to add to that before moving on?
I'm just wondering, this is the first time I've heard the name Amari Cooper being in the list of possibles. I know that he's definitely fallen off a bridge when he went to Cleveland, but I've always had a soft spot for him, and I thought that when teams try to utilize him, that he actually did perform. I don't know if it's too much to ask if we could look at some of his PFF grades or maybe something like that, but I don't know what he'd dictate as far as a salary hit this year. I mean, that one, Darius Slayton, that's another one where he hasn't done as much as I feel like Amari has. And then obviously you got your big names, your Godwins, your Higgins, and that kind of stuff. But you guys know me, I'm looking to be cheap and still get the best person available here. And if that, I mean, I just personally have always thought Amari Cooper was underutilized for what his talent base was.
I agree with that. And he's definitely probably one of the cheaper bargains in free agency without the numbers in front of me. I mean, he's 31, right? So he can't be wanting too much.
Holmes says, heck no to Amari Cooper. He done. 12 for this says, I'd rather have Cooper than T.
Yes, yeah, I kind of agree that I think Amari Cooper's done. Let's pull up his grades though, make sure I'm not overlooking something here, and make sure we got the
right. Only thing I would say to Amari Cooper would be we tried that. Who'd we pull up? The Clemson wide receiver, Sammy Watkins, right?
Yeah, that's not the same.
I'm just saying, you never know.
Yeah, this is going to be a no for me, dog. When you look at the grades of starting 2015, 71, 76, 63, 76, 84, 75, 73, 81, 79, and then 68. But keep in mind, it was with Cleveland, right? And Buffalo as well, though. So you got to take that into consideration. They traded mid-season for him, right? Am I thinking right? Yeah. So, to me, it all comes down to the money, But I'm not paying more than $5 million for a Amari Cooper, or whatever is it, Amari Cooper? Yeah, Emilio, what you just said there, it kind of feels like that. I have to agree with you. Like
that's where it's heading. That's all I'm worried about. First run. I mean, for talent, skilled player. If we thought it was going to work out, and just I don't know, man.
Yeah, and Sammy Watkins kind of felt like this 68.6 or 68.7 here. You know what I mean? When we had him on the team, it was just like, he's not horrible, but he's not a difference maker.
Right.
And Jacob, that's the issue we're running to. Tim and I, we had uncovered it earlier today, breaking down these wide receivers. Everybody's comparing like on the market. Our receivers are lacking targets. If our receivers had the targets that T. Higgins had, that Chris Godwin had, our receivers would have better numbers. Like Jaden Reed, we broke it down earlier. He would have had 1,244 yards receiving if he had T. Higgins's target number. And T. Higgins finished the year at 911 yards. So it's like, I don't know exactly why we're in love with those players when the production hasn't been there to warrant or justify $25 million. That's kind of what we've come up with. So, again, there's the number. Is that what you wanted to see, though, with Amari Cooper? Is that what you wanted to glance at there?
Yeah, no, I'm not pro Amari Cooper. I just am saying I haven't heard that name in the mix, so I just wanted to see if we could take a peek at it. I mean, that when you look at his grades, it does seem like it correlates with the performance of his quarterback. Like he had some hot times when Dak was hot in Dallas. Then he went over in 2022, and I think that was when they had that very flash in the pan type season with Deshaun before everything fell down there. So I don't know. It comes down to money. Like if I could get this dude for like $1 or $2 million a year, I mean, I'll try it. But
yeah, wouldn't be a bad choice there at all. Greg Rice says Tim's head would explode if Diggs was seen in Green Bay. Tim, is that valid there, sir?
No lies detected at all. That is the absolute truth. I'll keep my eye out around town though when I'm out and about, just make sure that he's not here talking to Goody or something, man.
There you go. All right, so Matt Schneidman had put a tweet out earlier today too. Let's get this up on the screen real quick for everybody. He had tweeted out a picture of Max Crosby with Rich Bisaccia and also with Josh Jacobs, and he had put the tweet there with it. As you can see, Keyshawn had tagged Max Crosby and said, "Come be great with a real team, my boy." So he's obviously recruiting Max Crosby as well, man. Hey, one thing about Keyshawn, man, it's I don't want to name drop here, not that anybody knows the people in my circle, but a buddy of mine has an uncle that he loved the ladies. Let me just say that. And one of the guys were sitting around one night. They said, "Buddy, if you don't have any success there, it's not because you didn't try." You know what I mean? Because he's just shooting his shot constantly. And that seems like what Keyshawn's doing here, man. He's just scattershotting right now. But again, I don't know, man.
I mean, it kind of feels like that's what Matt Schneidman's doing. I mean, it's Matt Schneidman's tweet, right? He tweeted.
He quote tweeted Keyshawn. Yeah.
Oh, so Keyshawn tweeted the pictures?
You see it at the bottom right here? No, Matt Schneidman put those pictures in there after Keyshawn tagged Max. Yeah.
I get it. All right. I was going to say.
Yeah, and that was after Keyshawn had actually quote tweeted Eli's tweet. So, and
now
again,
there's
Eli,
a clean crop.
Yes, absolutely. Other than the arms, man, the little baby arms. I may need to get back on the curl there. But the other thing too, Eli caught some heat over this, on Twitter. But it's you're just drumming stuff up, and then Eli made sure to specify like people coming at me as if I'm making this up. And I never said it's what Crosby said. I said it's what Rap Sheet said. He highlighted it here. Might welcome the change, particularly if it's to a playoff team where he knows people. Example, Green Bay. Crosby has 2 years, about $44 million. So everybody get off Eli's back there, man. Anyone who's pretending like that wasn't the team that was aforementioned, we're kidding ourselves there, in my opinion. So, but yeah, it's pretty cool that Keyshawn quote tweeted that. So it's on Keyshawn's mind. There's no doubt about that. Max Crosby, anybody got anything they want to add to that?
I mean, I love it. I don't expect it. I just don't see it happening. I don't see the money working out. I don't see Crosby being like, you know what? Vegas isn't that fun. I'm going to go to Green Bay. Because that Oval Office is hot, baby.
If anybody knows, it's that man down there in the lower left quadrant. All right.
Hey.
Another tweet we just put out that Jacob, give credit to Jacob for finding this over on the Die Hard Packers Facebook group, a graphic that was created. I'm assuming it's true. I'm pretty sure it is. Points allowed versus the Eagles in the playoffs. So Kansas City allowed 40 points to the Eagles. The Washington Commanders gave up 55 points. The LA Rams gave up 28 points. And the Green Bay Packers, led by Jeff Hafley, only gave up 22 points. So they gave up fewer points than any other defense in the playoffs to the Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles. Tim, I think this is it's an important stat, man. It just to kind of put things into perspective here that, hey, this defense played damn well this year, man.
It sure does. And it leads more credibility to the wide receiver conversation. There's a lot of people in the fan base that don't want to hear us talk about bringing in a receiver. But I mean, let's be honest. The reason we lost to Philly in the playoffs was we couldn't put points on the board. Mm-hmm. That's basically what it came down to. You're right. We held them to 22 points. We should have won that ball game. Anytime we hold an opponent under 30, we should be winning ball games, in my opinion. And so I think it lends some validity to the fact that with Christian Watson not being available next season, we've got to do something to bring not just a big name, but a proven performer into this offense. And then, like you said, Clayton, Matt's got to tweak the game plan a little bit, and we've got to get that perfect marriage of the run and pass, and get these receivers targets, because you can have all the talent in the world running routes. If you're not throwing the ball, it's not gonna help you. So I do think this is a cool graphic. I'm assuming this is accurate too, like you said, Clay. But it's very telling. It almost makes you feel that cringe again, realizing we probably could have beat the team that ended up winning the Super Bowl if we had a little bit better performance on offense. And maybe it's not just receiver. We talk about interior O-line too. So there's a multitude of issues we need to correct. But that's a huge jump for this defense. Hats off to Coach Hafley in one season, just kind of turning the ship and getting us on the right course. So I think we're on the right track defensively. We can always get better, but I really do. I think we need some weapons on offense, man, to get us over the hump.
Yeah, and as Deadfish says here, 22 points with how many turnovers? We fumbled the opening kickoff and gave them a short field that led to a score, and we threw 3 interceptions in that game. So 4 turnovers. 4 turnovers, and you still only gave up 22 points.
Yeah, we should have lost that game by 60.
Exactly. So, yeah, I'm excited about the defense moving forward.
Just real quick, I did confirm just now those are accurate, and which is even crazier, like Tim just talked about. So Eagles, Packers, we put up 10 points to their 22. Rams, Eagles, the Rams put up 22 to the Eagles 28. Commanders, Eagles, the Commanders only put up 23 to the Eagles 55. Chiefs, Eagles, they obviously put up the Chiefs 22 to the Eagles 40. I mean, our defense did the job. They did the job very clearly, and our offense just had to get basically another 2 scores in any kind of capacity, and we should have won that game. We should have. It's tough. It's a tough pill to swallow.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Emilio.
I mean, just bringing in the pieces and it coming together. You know, you brought in X, he solidified the secondary. You brought in a rookie safety, he solidified it. A rookie linebacker that stepped up. You know, where's our weak spot? I mean, where did we not see somebody step up for us this past year? It got to be the front four, right? I mean, I feel like that's where we're not happy with the performance, where it needs to work on. The fact that we held them to 22. You know, is just a testament to one, you know, field position, performing when you get the chance or draw the short stick. But I think that we also need to, you know, shoot for even better than that.
Yeah, definitely. So again, just want to put that into perspective with the defense and how well they played there in the playoffs. Like Tim said, you should have lost. You should have given it 60 points, based off those turnovers in the short field that was allowed there. So there you go. That's a walk around social media earlier. Let's go to the Patreon group real quick. If you guys want to join our Patreon group and get your questions read on the air, I'm tossing around an idea here too, guys. I just got to be real careful. Thought about opening up for the Patreon group, maybe certain members, it's like certain tier or something. I don't know. I'm just trying to think. What if we allowed them to have a link to the show where they can call in, right? It's just we've got to keep it brief if we do it. That's the main thing, right? If it turns into something where someone's long-winded, next thing you know, a call lasts, 5-6 minutes. We get through 3 calls. We didn't cover any of the stuff we want to cover, that type of thing. So I'm just tossing it around, maybe another added benefit to the Patreon group. But if you want to join our Patreon group, scan the QR code in the upper right. That'll send you to patreon.com/Packer Fan Total Access. You can get your questions read on the show here and be a part of the show as these gentlemen did here. Josh Martin with the first one says, would a trade for Giants Dexter Lawrence, defensive tackle, be worth looking into? So I did a little bit of research here, guys, and I did it along the same lines that I did the defensive tackle research with Milton Williams. You guys know that was a name that's been tossed around a lot. People were going and breaking down the film and saying, man, Milton Williams would be a great pickup. We pointed out Milton Williams is a better pass rusher than Devontae Wyatt, but he was nowhere near the run defender that Wyatt was in terms of run stops last year. So I did the same thing here with our boy Dexter Lawrence, right? Dexter Lawrence, just put it into perspective here. Devontae Wyatt run stop percentage is 19%. What you do is you take the run defense snaps, right? And you're going to basically divide it by the number of run stops. It's going to give you that run stop percentage, right? 19% in run stops. And run stops are runs that player made the tackle with 3 yards or less, essentially, is what it is. Like you're under 4 yards allowing on the carry there, as opposed to just tackles for loss. Or one stat I really don't like is tackles. A player can be tackling a player 12 yards down the field every single play, end up with 100 tackles on the year. That didn't do a damn thing for our defense, right? So that's why run stops, I think, are more important. So run stop, Devontae Wyatt, 19%. Dexter Lawrence, 16%. So he was a better run defender, according to that metric there, than Dexter Lawrence, one of the highest paid defensive tackles in the game. Quarterback pressure, Devontae Wyatt, 9.7%. Dexter Lawrence, only 9.6%. So Devontae Wyatt, when you look at it from quarterback pressure and you look at it from run stop percentage, Devontae Wyatt was more effective on a snap-by-snap basis than Dexter Lawrence. Pretty wild to think about.
Do you think that there's any understanding of the criticism, which I haven't raised any, and I don't think that we've raised much here on this podcast, but I have seen certain indications of like, hey, our coaches aren't letting these guys out there for a full game. Crosby, for instance, barely comes off the field. A guy like Danielle Hunt, you know what I mean? Like certain types of edge defenders. I know Ryan's boasted about this. We don't let him have 90 snaps. We'll have him have 50 and quote unquote he's fresh. Well, you could see the same for Devontae Wyatt. If Devontae Wyatt's out there as much as I'm sure Dexter Lawrence was, I want to see that fruition, like the amount of the pass rush ability, the win percentage, the run stop percentage, all that kind of stuff is great, but it's in a really small sample size because for whatever reason, we are bent on these guys having a hockey rotation. Do you think that that's beneficial? It's a double-edged sword, clearly. Do you think that one side is more sharp than the other right now? Because it seems like if we were to just, on paper, if you were to play Gary the whole game, if you were to play Wyatt the whole game, if you were to play Van Ness the whole game, and you could run that down the number of different players, they'd have we'd have a better outcome than what we're doing right now, where we're juggling like 6 guys that have an equal amount of snaps on a certain position. Is that crazy, or am I talking out of my butt?
No, that's a Matt LaFleur thing, though, man. He's now had 3 different defensive coordinators, and they've always had that hockey line, that heavy rotation, right? I mean, we talked about that over and over, didn't we, Emilio?
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's got to be a Matt LaFleur thing. For 3 different defensive coordinators to come through and do that the same way, it's got to be a Matt LaFleur thing. There's pros and cons to both of them, but that's why you'll hear me. That's why you'll hear me use percentages, run stop percentage, as opposed to just run stops in general, or sack percentages or pressure percentage. Because if you just look at the overall numbers, which is what most fans do, they just look at, well, he had more tackles, he had more sacks. That's not telling the whole story when you got a heavy rotation. Like, that's.
And if you have that heavy rotation, you're expecting guys not to take plays off. Whereas, I mean, you get sometimes you run those 60 plays a game, the run's going away from you. All right, I'm just going to stand up, engage this guy, and kind of, get by this play. I need a breather. I'm trying to save it for third down. That's what I would like to avoid by doing that hockey lane, which I think is what Matt's trying to do. But no, I do get the point, Jacob. I think it's a fair question, definitely.
Yeah.
I agree. And I think if we're going to take that approach, you have to do what you can to load up on talent. Then, if you're going to rotate often, and let's rotate dogs. We're only as good as our weakest link, and if you can add another piece or two to that rotation, and then like Jacob's saying, basically like stem the balance a little bit and have your premier guys playing the bulk, 70 to 80% of the snaps, and then your rotational guys can come in. And give them a breather, so they're not doing what Emilio's saying, which is we've seen it, hands on the hips. You're tired, you're gassed, you end up taking a play off, or you get lazy and you get roasted. So, I think there's nothing wrong with having that hockey line kind of rotational mentality, but I just don't think we have the right depth in the right groups to do that successfully right now.
I think Ron's comment, he goes, Rashawn needs to play more like 70% of snaps, not 59. And then also, what Redmo said here too, rotation has to be more situational, not just down and distance, etc., not a deliberate rotation. I think that's maybe the problem that we're looking at there is like, we got to get these guys at equal 30, 30, 30, you know what I mean? Or a 30, 30, 40, where it's like, no, we need to know who needs to be, we need to have Slayton in here on this because of this down. We need to have Gary and make sure Cox is on the outside in this situation, like because specifically, not just because we want to get them all 40% rotation or whatever it is.
Right, and we're geared up to run a TE here or an ET or a TT. Which players are good at that? Get Carl Brooks on there to lead the TT. He's the man at doing that. He can blast through that double team, occupy the double team, free up the other guy, and then obviously make his run there at the quarterback. There was another one I want to hit on. Somebody said, how did I think it was Josh Martin in the chat there said, how did Dexter Lawrence fare to Kenny Clark? Kenny Clark, one of the worst defensive tackles in the game last year when you look at statistics and PFF grade. But you have to take into consideration what we're talking about here. We're talking about Dexter Lawrence then you'd have to see, okay, what is his numbers as the one tech, right? And now you got to break down everything that goes on with the Giants and what they do schematically. With Kenny Clark last year, he played one tech all year long. There was sometimes you go with a wider front and you put them both D tackles in like a 3-tech type look. But for the most part, he played a one tech, and he done a whole lot of touch spine. And if you guys know what that is, it's basically occupy the double team and don't truly rush the quarterback. You're just kind of lagging back and looking for them to try to find the escape lane. That's why you've seen Kenny make a couple tackles downfield when the running back cut through the hole, and you'd see him just blast over and tackle him, maybe a 4-yard gain, because he was playing that touch spy. So that was something that was specifically put in the scheme by Hafley. And the only answer to that, there's 2 answers. It's to stop scrambling quarterbacks, and it's to help stop the run, right? It's essentially you're 2-gapping with one player is what you're doing. And look at the results you got in the run defense. So you could turn them loose and say, hey, Kenny, go after the quarterback. Everybody just pin your ears back and go. But we can't sit here and bitch and moan whenever Tommy DeVito runs all over us like he did. Whenever – insert name of running back that we got so tired of the run defense being so bad. You could tell that was the plan last year. About halfway through the season, we started to really identify that, Hafley is truly playing the run here is what he's trying to do. And in the meantime, everybody's roasting Gary. They're roasting Wyatt. Why ain't they getting more penetration? The answer is always on the tape, man. Always on the tape. But So there's that. I want to hit the super chat real quick. Seth Reuter, thank you so much, buddy. He says, think Raiders Browns would do Malik and a fourth for Crosby/Garrett. That's interesting. The Raiders need a quarterback, right? Well, they're probably going to go get Shedeur Sanders, I would imagine, but that's not a given. The Browns
both need a quarterback.
Oh, that's right. That's what I was wondering. Remember I was asking you the other day, what would you say to Malik going to the Browns or trade, being able to trade Malik for a quarterback needing team?
Well, do you remember too the whole caveat with that, Amelia, was that the Browns have no money. You talk about teams that have no money, they have no money, and no money specifically to just throw at the quarterback position. The only snowball's chance.
They tried that already, right?
Yeah, exactly. The only snowball's chance in hell this team has at even like clawing their way out of that Star Wars pit in the sand, you know what I mean, is that if they find a guy like Malik Willis who they can give hey, we'll give you $4 million or something like to start this year, and he could carry them maybe for a year, maybe two tops, and then they finally either cut weight with Deshaun, get a new draft pick, whatever the case may be. I think that's more realistic than the Raiders, because the Raiders have Pete Carroll. They've got guys that are excited about that, younger guys still. I don't know. To me, that would make more sense. I don't think that Malik is going to dictate that kind of draft prospect, and we could also get a Crosby or a Garrett. I don't think that works out the same way, but as the situation gets more dire, I'm sure that they'd be willing to pay more and more, as you know what I mean. It's very early. There's still Aaron Rodgers is out there, Darnold is out there. There's a lot of guys that are floating.
Yeah, and with the whole Myles Garrett thing, people just assume, okay, they get rid of Myles Garrett, they free up cap space. It's actually the opposite.
Yeah.
Huge penalties attached to Myles Garrett, unless they do some absolute magic with that option aspect of his contract. I just don't see how Garrett can be reasonably traded. And I say that reasonably because, believe me, the Browns are not reasonable. They're going to do something crazy. There's no doubt. So now if we put ourselves in the Raiders or the Browns' shoes and answer Seth's question here, if you're the Raiders, would you give up Max Crosby for Malik Willis and a 4th round pick? I would say no.
Yeah, me too.
If you're trying to build a team, a top tier position of importance is edge. You're taking 2 steps back if you trade Max Crosby. Now, will they do it? It's possible. I think the better chance of them doing it is if that player holds their feet to the fire. And same thing with Myles Garrett there, which he's holding their feet to the fire. The problem is the contract, and I think someone had said he had mentioned he's willing to do whatever he needs to do with the contract to make it work, which gives me a little bit of kind of, okay, remember we mentioned the option in that contract. There's probably some maneuverability in that aspect. So, Seth, hopefully that answered your question, buddy. Thank you so much for the super chat. We appreciate you. Back to the Patreon question. Chris Sin said he's on board with that Dexter Lawrence. Dexter Lawrence has been a good pro for a long time. There's no doubt. I'm just kind of comparing apples to apples here and going, okay, are we truly upgrading that position if we go that route? And I think someone had mentioned here, Prince said Lawrence has 3 more years.
3 more years.
Yeah. So
I was just going to say, can you imagine, like, look at this from the Giants' perspective. Like, you guys traded Saquon. You guys gave us Xavier McKinney. And now you're going to trade Dexter Lawrence. You might as well hand in your resignation, bro.
That's a good point.
And again, Dexter Lawrence, whether you think he's all world or you think he's just a good player, 3-tech, defensive tackle, tier 1 of importance, right? Just like the edge position.
Yeah. Tim, that's also after they gave the bag to Danny Dimes and then cut him like a year later. He's on the Vikings practice squad, basically. I mean, you talk about a front organization, that our front office that has absolutely buried themselves. I mean, obviously
they've made no changes, correct?
Yeah, well, not anything mean. Like, so yeah, you'd have to say Cleveland and the Giants, and then there's a laundry list of other teams. But I mean, consistently shooting themselves in the foot. I don't know, man. That's pretty bad.
Yeah, no doubt. Did you actually read Greg S's? Because it was kind of going hand in hand with what we were talking about just then. If you didn't, I'll read it real quick in the Patreon group. Greg S says, I don't see them fielding any trade offers after the embarrassment of letting Saquon and X walk while paying Jones and cutting him. That being said, I would love to have him on the team. So
exactly.
All right. Again, that's the question section of the Patreon group.
Joey says, though, we did give him John Roney Jr., though. So fair is fair. Fair is fair.
There you go. So in the free agent room here of the Patreon group, another question, another chat that we've got here. Chris N said, I've noticed my free agent attention. I've turned my free agent attention to DK Metcalf for offense. Contracts make sense for Seattle if they want to trade, and makes sense for the buyer if he'll continue on his current deal without extension right away. So let's talk about DK Metcalf, and let's run it through the same test, the same filter that we did earlier today with the other receivers. DK Metcalf, 108 targets, 992 yards, 9.1 yards per target. He only had 5 touchdowns. So, again, at 9.1 yards per target, that puts him still behind Jaden Reed at 11.4. It does put him ahead of Romeo Doubs at 8.3, and it would put him ahead of Higgins, who is at 8.3. So, to me, DK Metcalf, it would put him slightly behind Godwin, right? And with Godwin, you wouldn't have to give up trade capital, right? So the order I would put DK Metcalf is right behind Godwin, but I would actually put DK Metcalf ahead of Higgins. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So what do you guys think about that here with the talk about a DK Metcalf, a potential trade there?
Hey, I wouldn't mind DK.
I was going to say, I've had a personal draft crush on DK since I saw that guy strap on the cleats and actually start beating guys like in track races when he's about the size of Megatron. I mean, that's an actual physical freak right there. And I will say that of most of the kind of flash in the pan wide receivers, I feel like he has been the most underutilized by far of all of those groups there. I mean, Higgins has Burrow. Don't get me wrong. Like, we had a little bit of late season resurgence with the Seahawks quarterback who all of a sudden
Geno Smith,
but he's no, and he had late stage Russell Wilson. Let's go throw him over there with a quarterback that can put a dime on him and just actually utilize what he can do, because that's a physical. You talk about a possession X wide receiver that could be actually moved around and as is not just a prototypical X. I mean, that'd be cool. I'll be honest. I would. Greg Rice, Cox and DK makes sense, man. I'm telling you what.
Yeah, I would be all about DK. I mean, that dude is not afraid to go across the middle, not afraid to make anybody else pay. He's the one delivering the hit each time. Got speed, got strength. He can go up and get it. I think that it would be a good addition. Always back to it though. What's the price? Where are we going to be at it?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you were a free agent, I'd be a little more excited, but I'm not excited about auctioning off draft capital or players necessarily for him. But I think to Jacob's point, he graded out at a 74.3 this year. Like Clayton said, 5 tutters, just under 1,000 yards receiving, clearly underutilized, right? If he's in the right system, I could see him kind of having a mid to late career resurgence, right? He's going to be 28 this year, I think. So, I mean, I've always liked DK Metcalf. I don't know if he's that true answer to what we're looking for. Like when we talk about bringing in a Godwin or a Tay Adams, these guys that could come in and be a leader, for the younger guys. I think DK is more of like, hey, I'm the dude. I'm here. Give me the ball.
Yeah, that's what Holmes just said.
Yeah.
Exactly what you just said, Tim. He goes, DK's a crazy athlete, but he's not mentoring type. He won't help the young guys.
Totally agree with that. Doc, for sure. Because that's what I've always seen. That's not a knock on DK. I mean, not everyone is going to be that coach / player, leader, mentor type of dude. You need your guys that just do their job and do it well, and that's it. I mean, everyone's got a role to fill on a team. So, but that being said, I'm still with you, Clay. I think I'd rather have Godwin, over anybody right now at this point.
Yeah, for me, of the names we're mentioning, it's Godwin, then DK, then Higgins, is how I would put it. Again, once you kind of dive into everything, and I understand what you're saying. Like schematically, he would fill that void that Christian Watson's leaving behind. There's no doubt about that.
Yep.
But from a leadership standpoint, that's kind of tough. So, yep, as Prince says here, right? If you're looking for a guy to fill that Watson role, DK is it. Of all the guys we've talked about, no doubt. So, all right, appreciate those comments there. Now let's shift focus to the draft real quick. as we had a favorite prospect, I think that was mentioned in here in the Patreon group.
Should we split this, Clay?
We're going to do it right after this because in the
Okay.
second hour, what we'll do is the mock draft.
Nice.
So appreciate that, though, Emilio. Thank you, man. Greg S. says, Jason Kelsey recently said the toughest interior defensive lineman to block is someone shorter with long arms. There isn't much arm length data out on until the combine, but from a quick search, Joshua Farmer, FSU, fits that mold. Its draft profile is exactly what we need. His only knock is inconsistent pad levels, projected 100-ish pick. So appreciate that information there, Greg. And as you mentioned, Greg, there with the long arms, that type of thing, it's very important. Very important. I'm trying to think here too with the short arm and the long arm. Oh, I think there is arm length data out there. There's a website. If you Google Senior Bowl, now maybe Josh Farmer wasn't at the Senior Bowl. I don't have that information in front of me right now, but we'll go ahead and close out the Patreon group and let's jump over to the draft board. Emilio, do you have Josh Farmer pulled up?
Yes, he was at the Senior Bowl.
He was at the Senior Bowl. Where do we have him at on our board? Do you remember?
227.
227. Got it. All right. So there you go.
Real quick, what's funny about that is if you guys remember one of the metrics that I believe it was Sam Monson, he's the kind of foreign guy on what was the PFF podcast, I believe, and now it's with the 33rd team or something like that. But he would always make fun of these offensive tackles with their teeny little T-Rex arms, is what he'd call them. And he always had he'd call David Bakhtiari was not supposed to be a good left tackle because they had these teeny little
You
T-Rex
sound
arms.
like him, dude. You sound like him.
I'm trying. Well, and
I can't find it. I can't figure out if his accent annoys me or if I really like it.
I know.
podcasts a lot. I'm like,
It makes you listen to it. I love their dynamic. I think it's great. But I do think there's something to be said about certain guys being overlooked because they don't quote unquote meet that. Because it's, if I'm not mistaken, it's that first stab that left tackle needs to be able to make initial contact. The footwork's obviously a big thing where he's doing that pedal back, but it's that stab motion with whatever arm it is where it's like you want to make first contact and kind of dictate what's going to happen, which is obviously harder to do if you have shorter arms or whatever. But that would be something though that would be worth looking into to see, like Emilio said, when those measurements actually come out, what those if that correlates with what he gets kicked inside, for instance. Maybe like if they say, hey, his arms are too short, he can't be a tackle at the NFL league, we got to kick him inside, and what that would do as to where we would maybe take a certain guy on that spectrum. But I just, there's so many metrics nowadays. It's fun. Emilio, add another column to the Excel spreadsheet about little T-Rex arms.
T-Rex arm column.
We'll have a little dinosaur emoji.
Yeah, just put a little rawr.
Oh, that'd be awesome. A little rawr. That sounds like you over at the office there, Jacob.
Hey.
So yeah, Josh Farmer, like Emilio said, in the 227 spot, but it is worth mentioning. What's bringing him down, guys, is his PFF grades: 318th, 760th, and 571st. The PFF big board had him at 124. The consensus big board had him at 189. Daniel Jeremiah has him at number 39 on his big board.
But Clay, he's one of those guys that like we had before, before DJ's board came out and everything, we had him. Like, I mean, if you're talking 297, we are pushing 370-ish, right?
Yeah, right.
So, I mean, the dude climbed up immensely because our head scout, quote unquote, or one of our top, 3 or 4 head scouts have compiled this information that brought him in 130 spots. So, I mean, that's something that you're going to want to, pay attention to. What else is going to bring him down? He gets on the 33rd big board. I mean, he could be top 200, closing in on 150 maybe.
Yeah, because he definitely wasn't in the top 100 for the 33rd team. That probably changed, but again, I want to take the early information.
Right.
And then we got all the other boards, the late boards that are moving to the last second. We can use those later. That's cool. But right now, and with our board in general, I want it to stay very, very conservative in that regard. But he wasn't in the top 100. But if he's at 101, right, Emilio, then he's going to jump up our board big time, right? And the same thing with Dane Brugler when we put that information in at the end. So there you go. That's your Josh Farmer talk again. Thanks to the Patreon group. For those of you listening on the pod, that's going to do it for hour 1. We'll see you on the other side, but we're going to do a wide receiver first mock draft where we force ourselves to take a wide receiver with our first pick, no matter where we pick with that first pick. But we appreciate y'all on the pod. We'll see you on the other side.